I'm going to go over the computers and I'm just going to take my design and I'm going to recreate it inside of Photoshop. I was shocked at the time that I didn't get kicked out of the class. I put a printout on the wall and the whole class was like, what is that?
Oh, wow. Hello and welcome to the Photoshop Archives. I'm here with Matthew Richmond. We go way, way back. Matthew, welcome to the show. Tell us about your beginning and how you met me and how you came to know Adobe. I think this is a really interesting story.
First,
Yes.
thanks, Russell. It's good to see you.
That's good.
It's good to hang out with you. I was in art school in New York City in the 90s. When I rolled into art school was roughly the time that you were launching Photoshop.
So we're 1990.
So yeah. About then. What had happened, right, because my career started when the internet really landed, right? So there was all these art students all over the place. We were in New York. The internet was happening. We knew Photoshop, and all the art students were teaching Photoshop because it was like money on the side, right? Because everywhere in the East Village, on the lampposts, like the same on the poles where people say like, you know, lost dog or man with a van, there was pull-offs like, do you know Photoshop or do you know web design?
Oh, wow.
Learn it that way. It was just an amazing point in time, right? Where like digital tools were becoming real, right? Students who started in college at that point in time that had access to these digital tools had a superpower.
Yes.
On top of that, like the internet was starting to become like a source of, source of work, really, more than anything else.
Wow. You're taking me back. These are wonderful times.
So basically, every student that was graduating was starting a design studio. So I had started a design studio with two of my friends. We had gone to Cooper Union. We had the most traditional design background. Like you could use any color as long as it's red. You could use any font as long as it's Saban. Like that was it. And when we started playing on the internet, we started doing all this goofy, silly, weird, fun animation stuff on the web. And one day out of nowhere, we got an email from Adobe saying, hey, we're coming to New York, and we would like to invite 2 people from your studio to spend the day with us and talk about tools. And what we didn't realize until we actually like went to this event was they had blanketed like all the design studios, all the like up and coming known design studios. So it was kind of like this Noah's Ark thing where there was like 2 individuals from Razorfish and our studio and this and that all there. And there was nothing really to show. It was, we're Adobe. We've invited you to this fantastic penthouse apartment. We have all these whiteboards everywhere. Like, what do you need?
The marketing team was there.
The marketing team and the design team was there. It was like, what tools do you need to build on the internet to make this stuff? And we spent the whole day basically just saying like, well, we need a way to make HTML, but not just in code, visually, right? So like that was tools like Dreamweaver and things like that. It was, we need to make these animated GIFs, right? We need to be able to do this in Photoshop, and we were hacking away at doing it in Photoshop, but we needed what eventually became ImageReady. Right? So that conversation, it was fantastic because I first met Adobe in this situation where they're like, we're turning to you, a creative, to help us figure out where do we go beyond Illustrator and Photoshop. This was probably around like 1997, 1998.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
After that, because we were very engaged, like Adobe would visit our studio regularly, and they became one of our clients, right? So, you know, we were contributing ideas to ImageReady at the time, and all of a sudden they were like, well, why don't you do this? Or when Photoshop had, I don't know if you remember when Photoshop had the first web gallery, teeny tiny little images that were like this big on the web inside of Photoshop, like my team made that.
And that's when you first came to my attention. Is when, okay, who's this design firm? They're doing some really amazing stuff.
Yeah, because I had come out to speak at the Creative Suite launch. That was the sales team. That was a sales conference, and they wanted designers to help the sales team like know what designers think is cool about Creative Suite. And after I had presented, I remember it like it was yesterday, this guy I'd never seen before rushes up to me. You said, "Hello, I am Russell Brown, and you will come to my conference." And then you left.
I believe those were
That
the
was it.
exact words.
You just walked away.
You will come to my conference.
Yeah,
I'm a good sense. I know talent when I see it.
I'm sure you were busy, but like you said that, and then I went off to have lunch with everybody else, and I was like, I wonder if I'll ever hear from this man. And sure enough, like you called me and you said, "Come to the Adam conference."
I have a little tear coming to my eye thinking about this moment. That was a pretty crazy moment. Yeah, I saw the talent in you. I saw this information that I wanted, and I knew that my group that I was running, I did.
It was fun. It was wacky. I had no idea what
and
to
that's
expect.
why I invited you to my art director's invitational, where I put together art directors. I think my first one was with David Hockney. So you rated art up there with David Hockney.
That's
and
pretty high.
So I invited you to this session because you knew what the heck you were talking about.
It was web design. It was like teaching everybody how to start designing for the web.
Yeah. I came dressed as James Bond, and I even had a wig designed so that I could have James Bond hair.
And I was Q, and I was really excited to be Q.
And so I brought you to my conference. You spoke with these designers and art directors.
In costume. You're the only person that's ever gotten me to wear costumes.
Take us forward. When and why did you join Adobe?
Oh, that's a good question. So we had done many different, a lot of different work for different Adobe teams and products over time. And we had the studio for, I think it was around like 17, 18 years. The internet had gotten boring, to be quite honest, right? Like it was amazing for a decade or so, and it kind of got boring. So myself and my partner in the studio were just trying to figure out kind of like what was next. And one of the funny things is that occasionally from somebody I knew at Adobe, I would get a text message that would always say, "Would you ever consider moving to San Francisco?" And I would always say, "No." I have nothing against San Francisco. I just really like New York. All my people are there. So about the same time that I was trying to figure out what might be next if we were to do something new, my friend Josh, who was a director on the Adobe design team, sent me a text message that said, "You ever consider moving to San Francisco?" And I said no, as I always did. And the response was, "Well, what if we can make this work?" And I said, "Well, tell me more." Adobe had recently acquired Behance, a small little company called Aviary that was making all kinds of mobile imaging tools. And the interview that I had with Scott Belsky was, "How would you feel about having a larger design team in New York?" And I was like, "Well, now you're talking." Right? And I would always give Adobe a hard time because they would always fly to New York every year for their announcements. Right? They knew where their people were. Their people are in New York. So I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud to say that we have around 60 or 70 designers in the Union Square office in New York. A bunch of folks from Photoshop and things like that. So I feel great that Adobe has more of a presence.
You've come a long way, and you have brought Adobe a long way through your design leadership.
Well, that's very kind of you.
How many products do you deal with now here at Adobe?
Myself and my design directors are responsible for all of the Creative Cloud Pro products. We don't work directly on Firefly. Right? We are integrating a lot of the stuff back and forth with Firefly, right? All the AI stuff that's inside of Illustrator and Photoshop and Premiere, like we've done a lot of that, and we work really closely with the Firefly team, but they have their own VP of design.
Your design team is behind the scenes, and they're making the interface, this user experience. Is that the term that's used?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's the user experience here at Adobe. Why is the button red, and why is it in the corner, and what happens when it drops down?
There's many facets inside of Adobe design, right? And when we think about what our roles are, it's progressed beyond just an interface designer to more like the product experience, right? The experience end to end of like what this feels like. So we will sit down and focus on like, what are the goals, what's the right experience, how can we make sure that users can navigate through what in reality sometimes are a somewhat complicated series of steps and things like that and still be aware of what's going on. We have a centralized team that just focuses on like the spectrum design system, and they're kind of like the librarians or the owners of like what is official in terms of being in the UI. Yet at the same time, our designers are contributing. Like, a couple years back, we introduced the context bar.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of our users met a new interface where, the whole goal of the context bar was to say, okay, well, we know where you are and we know what you just did. So we can present you with like the next best actions inside of there.
So your designers sometimes come up with the actual ideas and propose them. They are going beyond just being told, here's a new feature, design it. They are going out and proposing the feature to the team as well.
In some cases, we're proposing it to the team.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, we're just coming together with engineering, product leadership, and we're saying, this is our objective. What do we want to do, right? And at the same time that an engineer might go and say, okay, this is an interesting idea, let me look into it. We as the design team say, okay, what's the user experience? Let's start building a prototype. Let's look at it from our side in real time. So holistically together, when we do it the right way, we're all coming together and contributing.
There's a couple new features that just came out recently that really I like is some adjustment layers. Yeah. Non-destructive adjustment layers.
Yes.
Let's look at clarity and dehaze, two of my favorite features. Who came up with that? Why did they decide to put that in? I didn't tell them to put that in. Your team is working on that, right?
Yes, and then like specifically on the Photoshop side, right? Like this has been kind of the long-term plan for a while, right? So as users are meeting adjustment layers inside of Photoshop, what they're also meeting is like some of the cool tech and capabilities that have been in Lightroom starting to also show up inside of Photoshop, right? And the fact that they're coming into Photoshop as like non-destructive interactions, a while ago we had said, look, like we have redundant things in both of these places. We know it's not in the best interest of our users to have redundant things with different results, but sometimes we can do this stuff right away. Sometimes we have to wait and work with the engineering teams for the technology to figure out, because we're kind of mixing like, two different systems together. So what I get excited about when I hear about those adjustment layers is like, that's going to help users to go back and forth from Photoshop and Lightroom, have familiar results, familiar experiences, and all of a sudden it becomes a little easier.
In the past, I was doing smart objects.
Yes.
I loved my Lightroom features, and I wanted my clarity and my dehaze. So I'd select the Photoshop item, make it a smart object, and then open the smart object in Lightroom, make those adjustments, bring it back in. So this is really cool that it's right there in position. It strikes me, I remember the first things I was thinking when you joined Adobe was this ability to bring all the applications together. I saw a Lightroom team and I saw a Photoshop team, and I didn't see the sharing going on. But you, tell us about the sharing.
I came in as a director. So I was one of the first directors hired from the outside, who didn't become a director inside of Adobe. And the joke was that when you have your own little studio, when you're working with all of these clients, titles don't make any sense. Like, this is what we learn. Like really early we learned, like, okay, explain to me what you actually do, because you'd have director here and senior director here and this and that, and it could be Viacom or MTV or any of these other clients. So I didn't really understand what I'd signed up for. And I remember coming in for my first meeting, and there was like 4 of us or 6 of us in the room. And I was like, where's the rest of the designers? And they're like, no, like this is just the directors. I was like, oh, okay. So this is the first time I'd ever worked for anybody else. So it took me a while to catch up to this. But when I came in, what I was getting to is when I first started, I was just focusing on DI. So I came in as the director for the digital imaging team, right? And that was Photoshop and that is Lightroom.
Yeah.
And the exciting first opportunity was Lightroom, because at that point in time, the team had just experimented, I think, with like an Android app.
Yeah.
And everybody knows Lightroom on the desktop, but there was really nothing on the web. And one of the first things I got to do was work with my new team on what we refer to as the Lightroom ecosystem.
Yeah.
Still to this day, I'm so proud of what we were able to do on that team, because very early on, earlier than a lot of other companies, we had Lightroom working in real time across a mobile device, the web, and the desktop.
What year did you join?
I joined in 2014.
I was going down this path of the beginning of time and thinking about the fact that we started with Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, PageMaker, all of these applications come by. I was thinking about a new feature here that came out recently, because I used to put text on a path in Illustrator. It was a struggle. It was a struggle, and it was slow. And the dynamic text now that your team came out with for Photoshop is pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there putting text on a path and making the text dynamically change as it moves across the path. It was difficult. In the old, I'll change my voice.
And it would flip sometimes.
I go back in time with this voice. But to have this new dynamic text feature right inside of Photoshop is really, really nice. And since I live half my life in Photoshop, that's a great thing to have. It was Lightroom on the phone and the iPad, which really made my life explode as a designer and a creative at Adobe, because I was photographing with a phone, editing on the phone, sharing from the phone. That was really a revolution in design and capabilities with Lightroom. And that's when I threw away my DSLR. I threw it away. And I made the phone my camera of choice.
Yeah, it was like you went outside. It was like you'd been in the Adobe building for years, and then once that happened, we were just following you on your adventures out in the world.
Oh, I see. Yes, I do post a picture every day. Social media to me is a vehicle for sharing and getting feedback, and as an artist, that's really important to me. Either good or bad, ugly, feedback is critical to an artist, I think.
I mean, you still got it. I mean, there's many a day that myself and other members of the team are like, oh, Russell just posted. I didn't know we could do that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Let's shift into AI since we're talking about this. AI is such a major part of our lives, and it's become even more part of my life. I must admit, when it first came out, I was seeing, well, let's compare it to the early days of typography and text, desktop publishing. The early days of typography on an iMac were terrible. You and I both lived through those phases. People were doing really bad typography on a Mac. I think people are doing some pretty hideous things with AI. I think it's going to get better. I think talented people are going to pick this up as a tool. It's going to grow up. These days, with all this power of all these tools we have, there's this question that comes up. Did I make it? Or did the tool make it?
I mean, in a nutshell, I believe that tools don't make things, people do.
Yeah.
Right? And that resonates a lot with me. I still teach once a week, right? And one of the reasons I still teach is I didn't want to get this fancy job and be removed from what happens day to day. So since I'd been teaching for years, when I joined, I said, I'll join, but one caveat is I will continue to teach. And I teach graduate students at School of Visual Arts in New York City. I do what I do every week, and then I sit down and I have to be in a room for 3 hours with young creatives who are also trying to figure this out in real time.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Those students in your class, how do they deal with this right now? Do they feel like they are the creator, or is the tool a creator? How does the student feel when they're using these new tools? And do they step into your class with something that AI has invented for them?
They have all the feelings at the same time. And we talk about it every week and how they're doing. Some of them dabble with it. I mean, I think What I started realizing like about a year or so ago is in the beginning when I'd walk in, I didn't know them and we'd had no conversations. It broke into like 3 different buckets, right? There's up and coming creatives who understand enough about AI and they choose to use it or don't use it. Then there's, like folks that are interested in it. They know enough about it, but they know it's not for them.
Yeah.
And then it's the third bucket that's the one that bothers me is people that know nothing about it. They just know they're not supposed to like it.
Yes.
And those are the ones I'm usually trying to say, okay, it's fine. You need to form your own opinion of what this means and how, but you can't do it if you're not informed and you don't know what's there, right? So, I do completely rationalize every single day with people that are like, I need to make this part over here myself. Like, this is my jam, right? Like, I love to do vector illustration in Illustrator. I don't want anything in between me and that moment. And I want to be focused and I want to be like in my zone and making that. However, beyond like the sitting there and making this thing that I wanted to make myself, there's a dozen things in the creative process that I don't get excited about. Like prepping it for handoff to a client. That is not something I want to spend an hour and a half on. Can AI help me with that? Actually, it can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that really what we're seeing is like everybody should be wrapping their head around this, learning as much as they can and figuring out like what parts of this technology can save them time and energy and money so that they can protect the part of the creative experience they want to do, right? You still want to go outside and travel,
Yes.
right? You didn't say like, hey, Matthew, I generated this image of the Northern Lights. You needed to do that yourself in order to feel like it was yours. The toothpaste is not going back in the tube, right?
Yeah.
For all the things in AI that make people a little nervous, there's a handful of things that are like no-brainer, like this is amazing. This is going to make things better one way or another. And like everybody out there who one is presenting themselves honestly, being transparent about what was made and how it was made, and not just trying to like trick people. Like you I think are once again like one of those mavericks ahead of everybody else, just trying to help us all figure out how do you have a portfolio where like I did all this by hand and then I went over here and like this is my other body of work and I'm playing with this concept over here. One of the byproducts of this capability is the technology itself doesn't know when anything is done. And it doesn't know when anything is good.
Oh, absolutely. There is a point in itself.
And there's pluses and minuses here, right? Some people, creative or not creative, are great curators. And not all creatives are good curators. And that's what's really hard here, right? Because like there's folks that spend a lot of time and it takes a process for them to get to the point in time which like this is done. And then there's tons of people and tons of students who have a harder time knowing when something is actually done. So what this technology actually has done that flips things sideways is you cannot know how to make anything with any tool. You can use this technology to make things, and then if you can curate well, you can find the things that are freaking brilliant and amazing. So curation is a really important part of using this technology. Like, I don't even know if you're like, were you a good curator? Like, what to say?
You have hit the meaning of life here today. Curation. I did not have the word until you just realized. You made me realize you have to be a good designer to know what is good and what is bad and set in front of you. And that is where the human is always going to be important in AI.
Yes. And an important part here to make sure we specify is like, you can learn to be a good creator. Right? Like I don't want anybody to think like, well, I'm just not a good curator, therefore I'm going to fail at being a visual artist that uses AI. Like, it is a skill, it can be learned, but it takes time and energy to figure out, like, and that's really like, you know, students in school, professionals just starting their careers. Like, it's really like, I don't know when I'm done, or I don't know if this is good enough. All of that has a basis in like, are you a good curator?
There are lots of other choices to make, other products on the market to curate their imagery. I think what Adobe brings is a really smart team of designers, engineers, and we're always working to bring out the next great thing.
And I'll add to kind of like how proud I am of our teams, of my designers. I deeply believe that everybody that's here, that's working on this stuff right now, is here because they believe this is a really important moment and we have to get it right. And it's not like we just have to get cool tools right. It's that we have to help with this transition from here to here in an honest way that keeps creatives in control of their work, that informs their way of working and how they'll work with their clients and customers in the future. Like, if you go back to the very beginning of this, when we were just talking about, you know, the Firefly model and what it would be and being, you know, safe for commercial use and all of this, all this was debated. And what I've seen and what I've been able to contribute to, along with everybody else here, is like, what's the right thing to do by the users? What's the right thing to do by the industry to make sure this grows in a trustworthy way?
There's a new feature in Photoshop that allows you to add non-destructive grain.
Yeah.
Now, I go way back. I was adding grain to my darkrooms in 1973. What do you think of that as a new aesthetic? It's like bringing back vinyl records for the sound, so the grain.
I mean, film cameras are very popular.
Very popular.
What I like about it, what kind of warms my heart a little bit, is records, film cameras, generating grain. It's just more of an appreciation of tactile experiences, which is good.
They've done a really good job with this grain. The size of the grain, the coarseness of the grain. And I've tried to do that in the past, and it was destructive. And this is really quite beautiful. It's a really, really smart new feature. We've always been able to make selections the old-fashioned way, but my new favorite feature in Photoshop is the AI-powered selection capability that magically selects subject like never before. Unbelievable. Selections driven by AI. Speed and accuracy. There you have it.
I remember my very first design class at Cooper Union. They wanted us to use like Plaka.
Yes.
Right? Like, and
Now,
if
the
people
studio audience, that's a tube of paint. It's called Plaka, and it's made with water, and you put it on with a brush. It's actually a small brush.
Yeah, it's very thick, right? And we were doing, like, I forget, it was like a logo or some kind of like project.
Plaka.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like doing all my pencil sketches and I like what this is going. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want to use that. This was literally like my first or second assignment. I don't want to use that. I'm going to go over the computers and I'm just going to take my design and I'm going to recreate it inside of Photoshop. And in the back of my mind, it was because I can change it. Like, once you commit to doing all of it, like, you had to start all the way over. And I was shocked at the time that I didn't get kicked out of the class, but I was like the only freshman in the computer lab doing my homework on the computer, and I put a printout on the wall, and the whole class was like, what is that?
Printout on the wall. And what year was this?
Oh, 1994.
Okay. Imagine it's 1980, and I'm in my art center class, and we have no computers at all, and everything's done with Plaka, gouache, marker pens, and you have to have 35 different variations on the wall. Wow.
Well, and it's the same technology roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of people at the time that like had Plaka down. That was their process. They had nailed it.
Yeah.
I was the young kid. I had no idea what was going on. I thought I was going to get kicked out of school, but I was like, that does not make sense because over there's these new things.
I was the renegade. It's good to have renegades in school.
Yeah.
Tell us one hot take
Yeah.
you have to share with our audience here today.
All right, so this is where the whole thing kind of flips on its side, which is when I first started teaching at School of Visual Arts to the illustrators, my entire goal was to essentially help them make the transformation to working digitally,
Yes.
right? And over time, it's been the computer, it's been tablets, it's been all of these things. The whole situation has actually flipped. And it's fascinating to actually be here at Adobe while this happens, because now there are so many young creatives coming into schools who have only grown up drawing digitally, and there's a gap in their knowledge.
Right.
And it's fascinating, and it actually needs to be kind of like worked out of them. So for example, traditional illustrators and artists knew their like line weights and styles, and they knew what their hand looked like, what I was talking about before. All these folks who have only grown up drawing digitally have none of that rationale, right? The whole idea that you would thicken the lines for the parts of the illustration or drawing that you want to draw attention to, it's lost. So we've actually spent a lot of time, it's backwards. Now I do a lot of analog drawing projects with these same individuals to give them that balance. So we have to make sure that like, this is also an example of like kind of history getting potentially left behind.
Like a pen and quill you have to bring out.
Kinda.
Where you could change the
By pushing
width,
harder.
And
Yes.
They wouldn't even know that.
Nope.
Would they? Our studio audience doesn't even know that. Our studio audience doesn't even know what a rapidograph
Well, it also goes back, yeah, exactly. But it also goes back to like what we were talking about with film, right? Like every time these things happen and like technology shifts and new capabilities happen, there is still really important stuff left
Yeah.
in all the technologies that came before.
Matthew, I think Photoshop should never lose this spontaneous, creative capabilities, things that can happen by mistake, things that spontaneously appear in front of you. The use of levels or dodge and burn, or even I'm thinking channel operations, even down to the other day, blend if.
Yep.
Things that you don't know what's going to happen, and by experimentation, they do. So I think it always should have things that can go wrong. That sounds crazy. But I think there has to be a tool that you have no idea what it's going to do until you give it a try. It's not a fixed thing. It changes, it transforms. I don't think we'll ever get rid of those. I think they're going to be with us for a long time. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay. And what do you think?
I mean, this could be controversial,
Oh.
but
He looks to the camera.
I don't know what the right word is for it.
Oh.
So I'm going to say that Photoshop can't lose its character. There's these phases where we've been like, oh my God, there's so much stuff in these tools. There's just random things in this corner and random things in that corner. But the more time I've spent here and the more time I've spent working on these tools and working with creatives, we are going through a process right now where we're actually trying to figure out like what are the core capabilities of all of these tools that we need to make sure we preserve as we move them forward, because with AI and just how agents need to work across these systems, you can't have all of these redundant things.
Yeah.
However, inside of Photoshop, inside of Illustrator, inside of InDesign, inside of Premiere are these teeny tiny little random features
Yes.
that were put there at one point in time.
Yeah.
And somebody always says like, oh, maybe we don't need that anymore. There's only this many people using it. But the thing about it is like those little random things that I used to grumble about, I've come to realize like those are actually the little nuances.
Yeah.
Those are like, for the people that know that little thing in that corner, like that is their whole world, and that is the unlock to their style or their business. So like some of that character We need to make it a little easier to find, but we need to make sure we retain some of those things.
Is one of those calculations inside of Photoshop? Is it still there? I haven't looked today. Calculations.
Okay, help me here.
Calculations was invented by John Knoll
Okay.
for calculating channels so that he could create a green screen extraction from the movie The Abyss.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I mean, I knew that it was heavily used in
I
the Abyss.
believe it's still there. It's one of those hidden features you're talking about. One of those
Now I want to go play with it.
characters
Yeah.
that exists. And if it were to be removed, someone
will notice.
Someone will notice.
Making it more approachable, making it easier to use, modernizing these tools while still keeping the character is important.
Thanks for joining me here on the Photoshop Archives. My name is Russell Preston Brown, and you just heard from Matthew Richmond. Thank you so much. See you next time on the Photoshop Archives.